Strike up the band so you can give your kids a helping
Blending
hand.
and balancing. These are some of the most important things you can spend time doing with your ensembles, and most directors probably do not spend enough time working on this. If you can fix this, you are going to find that your groups are sounding better and it's not hurting your ears as much. And for some reason, blending will often fix some tuning problems, but we'll talk about that in a minute as well. So these are 5 tips for teaching blending and balancing in your ensembles. Tip number 1, use function chorales or just chorales in general. I like the function chorales. You can look these up and find them under that specific name because it's 25 plus chorales that are based on numbers. So there's the soprano, alto, tenor, and bass part, but there's just numbers and rhythms assigned to it. So you can use each chorale in 12 different keys. And so I found that it helped reinforce the scale work I was working on with the students. And then when you use these, change it up. So sometimes instead of having the same people play the soprano part, you might have them play different parts and just change it up so that it's something different for them. But function chorales, I put these in the folders, and we use these a lot in every single group that I've taught. Number 2, change up the seating. Do something totally different. Bring people from the back to the front, or the people from the front to the back, or sit in a big circle with everyone facing each other. Sometimes I've even had them sit in a circle with their backs to each other. Usually this was for a marching band to really get them to listen to the different parts. You might have them sit next to an unlike instrument. So just have them switch it up and say that you can't sit next to anybody that is the same instrument as you. Now, one warning about this with middle schoolers. I don't know what it is about middle schoolers especially, but it seems like when you change one rule or one expectation you've normally had. So, for example, I always, in all my classes, I have assigned seating. But it seems like when you change up one rule, then they think all the other rules are out the window. I have literally had students pull out a cell phone who never did, and normally were ones who never would even think about it. And I said, "What are you doing with your cell phone out?" "Well, we had different seating today." "Well, what does that have to do with the cell phone?" But that's just a middle school thing. If you teach middle schoolers, you'll understand. Change up the seating to something totally different. Tip number 3, tell the students to listen across the room. Tell them make eye contact with someone completely across the room and to make their sound fit into that person's sound. I don't know why this particular terminology works, but I have not seen it fail. If you ask the student to fit their sound into someone that you're picking across the room. Tip number 4, this is actually my favorite one, and I use this a lot. I think I heard this phrase or this expression at a clinic I went to, and I don't remember who to give credit to it, but they talked about how the wind ensemble, the focus of the sound of the wind ensemble is actually the clarinet section. So what I will do is we will be working on a scale or etude or chorale, and I'll start with just the clarinet section leader, and then we'll have the whole clarinet section play, and I'll ask the clarinet section to fit their sound into their section leader sound. And then I keep adding different groups, usually the quiet ones first. So I'll usually add the flutes and then maybe the low brass and then the saxes. And usually in my groups, the trumpets and the saxes are the ones that have a harder time blending and making their sound fit in. So we'll talk about that the entire way. As we keep adding, I'm asking the other groups to listen to what they're hearing so far. And if the sound is fitting, I'll tell them that's great. If not, we'll go back one step. So, for example, if we add the trumpets and now all of a sudden the sound doesn't fit, we'll take them out again, make the trumpets listen, or we'll start with just the trumpet section leader and do kind of the same thing. I found this tip to be the best one. And then tip number 5, this came about 20 years ago when Dr. Kramer from Indiana University retired, he came to my area, Colorado Springs, Colorado, and I was able to bring him in as a clinician. I was still a young director at the time, and the first thing he did was tune my low brass. And I was thinking to myself, why did I not hear that? And so he got the low brass in tune. They were almost all really sharp. They were pushed all the way in, and they were extremely sharp, which makes it hard to balance the group overall. There's a lot of connection with balancing and tuning. So once we got the low brass in tune, the group sounded that much better, and the balance and blending happened a lot better. So check your low brass tuning especially, and you might spend a bunch of time on this right at first with a tuner just to double check your ears, because sometimes when things are, our ears hear flat better than sharp. So you can be sharp and think it's in tune, but usually flat you'll hear. So if you're not sure, I always tell my students this too: when in doubt, pull out. So if you're not sure if you're sharp or flat, make it flatter, and if it gets worse, then you'll be able to hear that. But check the low brass tuning. I hope that these tips have helped you to be able to teach balance and blending to your students.
The Music and Podcast, where you get quick and easy tips for how to be a better band teacher.